Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you all had a good lunch. For the people who did eat, we had pizza when COVID wasn't a thing. Obviously, people would have pizza with us, but that's not possible right now. Anyway, I'm gonna be kicking off the first presentation, but before I do that, I want to thank SOCAN, our funder again, and CMC, our co-host, and Long McQuaid and ICOT, who are our sponsors and our donors. And so thank you for supporting for supporting the workshop and everything that we do here. Okay, so I'm going to be kicking off the first presentation, which is an introduction to strings presentation. And look at that, this girl over here. Her technique is so good that she's on fire. Here with us today, we have the Grenadier String Quartet. So we have Claire Pellerin. Give us a little wave. Claire Pellerin. Then we have Yegane Sutudenia. We have Kimiko Suzuki, and we have Mansur Kadyrov, who is filling in for the usual cellist, so that's probably why he doesn't exactly look like that in the photo that I have. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, or if there's anything that you want the Grenadier String Quartet to demonstrate or expand on, feel free to write them down in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Know that there is, I've said this before, but know that there is about a 1 minute delay from what you guys are seeing on the live stream, which is why we can't answer questions in real time, because by the time we get them, we're already moved on to the next topic. Now, for string players, when we look at a composition, we can usually tell if the composer was a string player or not. And that's because, as with any instrument, there are a lot of unspoken rules that we've been trained to already incorporate into our playing. So that being said, in this presentation, I'm not only going to be talking about some commonly used techniques, but I'll also be talking a little bit about these unspoken rules. So it gives you insight about on how you can make your string playing more playable. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the presentation. And I hope that with this presentation, you guys see a technique and you're like, oh, I want to incorporate that into my piece today. Please go ahead and do that. I encourage you to play around with your composition and play around with any technique that you see that you want to try. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is bowing. Okay, and this is the symbol for down bow, and this is the symbol for up bow. So string players have unspoken rules when it comes to bowing. So some of these examples of the rules are, we have in a 1, 2, 3, 4 beat pattern are oh, I accidentally messed up. But it should be down, up, down, up. So 1, 2, I don't know if you can see me. 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be down and this should be up. So this is wrong. Another thing is that up beats are usually done with an up bow. That's because our down bows are usually heavier and our up bows are usually lighter. So upbeat with an up bow. And then crescendos are usually done with an up bow. And then decrescendos are usually done with a down bow, as you can see right here. String players don't usually like to be dictated about how to do bowings unless there's a specific reason the composer wants to tell the string players hey, I want this on a down bow, even though it's an upbeat, because it does change the articulation a little bit. So excessive bowing instructions are confusing and unnecessary. So I have an example over here. O. MacDonald Had a Farm, which is a piece. Let's just say that I don't know what O. MacDonald Had a Farm even is. And this is the first time I'm looking at this. Me as a string player looking at this, I would be very confused because I would be like, well, what is the composer trying to tell me? Why are they telling me this is redundant? We already understand that this is a down, up type of figure. The only time I would say it's necessary, or not even necessary, but maybe you might want to put in a few bowings, is if you're writing for beginners and specifically kids. Some kids might need oh yes, this is a down bow, just so that they understand this is where we are. But aside from that, I would say composers don't usually write in bowings. What do you guys think? You guys don't like bowings in your music, right? Yeah, it's just unnecessary, especially if it's like this. Now, how something is phrased and bowed how a phrase is bowed is usually up to the musician, I guess, unless there's a certain way that the composer wants something to be phrased. That can be changed with the bowings, okay? The unspoken rule for upbeats is up bow. So you have bum bum, up down, okay? But if you have a down up figure, that actually changes something that the way is articulated. So what I have over here is that I have Vivaldi's Spring. Up on the slide over here, I have Vivaldi's Spring, and I'm going to have the quartet do an example of what it would sound like if you have the general bum bum da 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 up down dun dun da da dun dun up down da up down. So the up bow with the upbeat, and let's have them do an example of that. Now to bring it back to the slide, the next slide I'm going to show you is that we're going to change the bowing. Okay, so instead of the up bow on the upbeat, we're going to have a down bow on the downbeat. So it's bum bum ba da 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 down up, bum bum ba da 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 down up, da down up, dun dun da da dum dum. Okay, and let's have the quartet do that now. Yes, and then bringing it back to the slide now. So isn't it cool that like a little thing such as like bowing can change the way that things are articulated and the way that things are phrased? When you have dun dun da 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 bum, it's a little bit more springy. Dun bum da da down 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 up is a little bit more heavy. And you can decide for yourself which one you like more. You can put it in the chat if you have a preference. Yeah, another example of when you would want to write down bowings is if you're doing retakes, okay? So retake is either going down, 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 or up, 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 okay? So in the slide, I have Borodin Symphony No. 2, the first movement, okay? And I'm going to show you what it sounds like if the musicians were to just do it as it comes. Da, 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 da. Just as it comes bowing, okay? And let's bring it to the quartet now. Okay, awesome. And then back to the slide, we are going to change the bowings and we are going to now do the retake. So in the slide, you see that I've written in down, 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 and then the fermato's down. Okay, so let's hear how that one sounds now. Okay, so as you can see with the down bow retakes, it sounds a little bit snappier, bum 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 bum, as opposed with just as it comes da 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 dum. The next one that I want to do is the second movement of Eine Klein, the Romance, okay? So what we're gonna do with the quartet is that we're just gonna have them do down, up, da 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 da, down, up, just that phrase. Yes, let's hear the quartet do it.
Right after the third repeat time?
Yes. Okay, thank you, quartet. Now back to the slide. What we're going to do now is that we're going to do up bow retakes. Now with Eine Klein, I don't think they're usually up bow retakes. I think they're just usually up, up, up. But for this example, we're just going to do up bow retakes. And whenever you're ready, quartet. right, thank you, Quartet. Now, obviously, these pieces are well-known pieces that have been recorded many, many times. So, I would say for Mozart and for Bourdon and for these pieces like this, there's usually a correct and incorrect way to play them. But when you're writing a new piece and you're the composer and you want to play around with bowings, I obviously encourage you to play around with it because it does change articulation and phrasing. And if you're not sure about bowing or anything like that, you can always just ask a string player. I'm sure that everyone will be really, really helpful in regards to that. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is slurs. 2 or more notes played within one bow stroke. And of course, it can also affect the way that things sound, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is that I want... let's have Mansour, the cellist, can you just play like a C major scale 1 octave slur 2 bow and then ascending and descending? Okay, and now slurs can be articulated with staccatos and tenutos. So in this chart that you see here, Mansour is going to play the exact same thing, but on the chart with staccatos and tenutos in. Nice. Thank you. Now, back to the slide. What I want to do is I want to show you another example of the power of slurs and how that can change how something sounds. So what we have over here is Dvorak's Humoresque, and this is how it's usually written, and this is how it's usually played. So you have bum, dum, bum. So the slurs are like hooked. Dum, bum, bum, bum. And Claire is going to do an example of this. And whenever you're ready, Claire. Nice. Now, back to the slide. What we're going to do now is that we are going to change where the slurs are placed. So instead of a down, slur, 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 it's just the slurs are going to start immediately. So slur or slur or slur. And let's see how different that sounds.
I don't even know if I can play.
I know, it's awkward.
Okay.
Okay, so as you can see, the power of slurs, and feel free to just write down what you think sounds better. But this way is what we're used to playing. So it is a bit awkward to ask Claire to suddenly just change to bowing. Da, 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 da. Okay, now that bowing and slurs are out of the way, let's move on to techniques. And remember, if you have any questions, just drop them down into the chat below and we'll get to them at the Q&A. So the first technique is pizzicato, is the plucking of the strings, and it can provoke a playful mood. So keep in mind with pizzicato, when you're writing pizzicato, especially if you're writing like an entire movement of pizzicato, just like straight like dun 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 dun, the faster you have a pizzicato, like the faster the movement is, the softer the pizzicato will be played, because actually, you know what? You'll see why later. So that being said, if you're going to write a piece that's very, very quick with pizzicato and you write like fortissimo, that can be a little bit difficult to achieve. So the faster you have your piece, the softer it will get. And you'll find that if you have it too fast, then the musicians will just not play it because they cannot play it. If it's like, we won't be able to do that. So let's do an example, and I want to hear, let's do a G major scale 2 octaves plus the arpeggios. Don't repeat the octave notes. And what we're gonna do is that we're gonna have the pizzicatos. We're gonna have the quartet play the pizzicatos, and it's going to be a nice slow tempo. So bum, 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 1, yeah? So to the quartet, and I'll count you in. Pizzicatos. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Now let's do quarter note. Bum, 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 bum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Now let's do bum, 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 bum. 4. Now let's do it faster. Da 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 da. Like 4. Nice. Okay, now can we try that tempo fortissimo?
Oh.
3, 4. Okay, so as you can see, it gets a little bit messier towards the end. So the reason why you can't have, or I don't want to say can't, but it's not ideal to have fast pizzicato passages at a forte is because the faster you play it, the closer your fingers have to get to the string. And if your fingers are that close to the string, you can't achieve that forte pizzicato. Okay? And then, oh yes, performers need to give the musicians time to go from arco to pizzicato and vice versa, okay? The example that the quartet was showing, they put their bows down. They put their bows down because they were only doing pizzicatos. But usually in orchestra, what you have is that they'll have their bow up and then they'll play the pizzicato. Does Claire want to just demonstrate how that would look? Yeah, exactly. So yes, you do have to give them a little bit of time. And then in terms of time, let's just try something. Let's just try a C major scale 1 octave. And then can you just play arco, da 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 da, pits, 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 and just ascending, a C major scale. Cool. Now let's try a little bit faster. Da 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 da, ba 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 ba. 3, 4. Cool. Awesome. Now let's do da 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 da, ba 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 ba. 3, 4. So as you can see, that's not ideal. But then did you notice that they were trying to play as close to the frog as possible? Because when they're at the frog, it's closer to the finger. So they can just, it's easier for them to reach, okay? Let's do that again at that tempo, but play it at the tip. All right, so I hope I proved my point. Okay, now I want to talk about left-hand pizzicatos. So left-hand pizzicato is used when the finger above is used to pluck the stopped finger below, okay? So if your first finger is stopped, then you can use your second or your third or even your pinky. I don't know why you'd want to use your pinky, but you can use these fingers to pluck the string while your first finger is stopped. You can use, this technique can be used for like fast action. So if you have like, an arco to a pizzicato, like play pits, play pits, play pits, play pits, something like that, you'd want to maybe incorporate left-hand pizzicato. Just letting you know, unless you're pizzicatoing open strings, it is a little bit more of an advanced technique. So keep in mind when you are writing for beginner students that if you're, for example, this graph over here, I would not give that to a beginner student because this is actually quite difficult to achieve for many people and for me. Okay, Claire, do you want to give an example of, you don't have to do this graph, but if you want to give an example of left-hand pits. Nice. And yes, don't write this for beginner students, guys, unless you're writing open string left-hand pizzicato, and that is okay. Okay. Let's move on. Oh yeah, and then one thing that I also want to mention is that obviously if you have your fourth finger down, you can't have a left-hand pizzicato for your fourth finger because there's no finger above it. Okay, so then the next one we have a Bartok Pizzicato, which is a snap pizzicato. So it's named after, you guessed it, Bartok. And Rowan, I bet you're really happy about that because of your tribute to Bartok piece. And yes, it was in his string quartet number 4. So what happens is that you pluck the string so far out that it snaps back onto the fingerboard. This is not a technique that can be played fast, so you can't have like a playful pizzicato movement and then have like all Bartok. It just doesn't work. It's usually only done on like a few accented notes. Yeah, so it's like a little like oomph at the end of a piece or something like that. And it can untune the instrument. So a lot of times when so Britain has his simple symphony. I think the second movement is the playful pizzicato. So what happens is a lot of time after the second symphony, the players will tune again. And then this is especially true for Bartok Pizzicato because you're pulling your strings so far out that you usually do end up untuning your instrument a little bit. Let's do something fun and let's have but before we do this Twinkle Twinkle Pizzicato, let's have Kimiko play a 1 octave descending C major scale, and then on the last note just Bartok Pizz. Nice. I love that. She's gonna need to tune again after that example. Okay, so now we have the Twinkle Twinkle Pizzicato, which is on the screen right here. And I thought it would just be like a fun little break, and just to have the quartet play this. I did write it, and no, I'm not a composer, so please don't judge me on this. But yeah, let's have the quartet play this as like a nice allegro tempo. So whenever you're ready. Nice. Thank you for those Bartok Pizzes right here. If you look on the screen, you'll see that. Okay. And then, of course, you can always change it up as you see fit. You know, we can always have Claire play the melody instead of pitzing the melody because she is the melody. Let's have that, but let's only have 4 bars this time. I don't think we need to play the entire thing. So quartet, whenever you're ready, with Claire playing arco. Nice. And thank you, Monster, for also playing. That sounded awesome. Okay, so now that we've talked about pizzicato, I also want to mention strumming, because a few people have mentioned it before. And then I've added this nice picture of this man strumming with his wolf. Okay. Now with strumming, what it is that you have a bunch of chords basically that the musicians are playing, and they strum it. And you can either strum it upright like this, or if it's a faster tempo, then you can literally place the violin down and strum it like a guitar. I've only seen one composer do it this way, and it's Prokofiev, which you will actually see an example of this later. Where is this? Yes, with pizzicato, if you need to give performers time for pizzicato, then you need to give performers time, like more time for strumming, especially if you're going to place your violin down like a guitar. You have to give the musicians time to do that. Okay, now let's try to do let's have this example. This is Twinkle Twinkle again, okay? And what I'm gonna ask for the second and the violas, for their strumming, I want them to try it upright for now. And we're going to do same tempo. I think same tempo sounds nice. Whenever you're ready, quartet. Okay, and now what we're going to do is that we're going to turn the quarter notes that the viola and the second violin has into eighth notes. So it's a little bit faster. Bum, 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 like that. And what they're going to do is that they're going to strum it again with their violins up. And now finally, you're going to put your violin, so the second and the violas are going to put their violin down in their lap. They're going to treat it like a guitar. And let's have the tempo. So you guys are still doing eighth notes, but let's have the tempo a little bit faster. So bum, 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 da, 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 da. Thank you. Now, if you bring your back, yes. So thank you for that. Now, again, if you're going to do it this way with the violins down, they can they can be a little bit faster. They can even play 16th notes if they want to. Da 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 da. However, obviously, you need to give the musicians time to put down their violin, to put up their violin. So I want to take this time to just give an example of like some bad strum writing. I'm not saying the composition is bad. I'm just saying that ideal, like technicality, just giving the musicians time, it wasn't the most ideal. And that is Prokofiev's Saint Kiji. No, not Saint, Lieutenant Kiji. Okay, so in the seconds and the violas, you have the da 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 da, and this is all strumming. So what usually happens is that the musicians will again put the violin on their lap and just da 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 da. However, the problem comes from the way that he wrote it for the violas. And I think the second is also a bit iffy, but I'm just going to use the viola chart as an example here. So what you have is that you have all of this strumming. This is all strumming, da 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 da, right? And you have a strum over here, and you have a pizz over here, and you have a strum, and then you have an arco, and then you have back to a strum. Okay, so like it's not ideal. And when I say it's not ideal, it's not the best thing to do, because you can argue that over here you can put your violin back up so that you can play that arco, but then you have to put your violin back down, or your viola back down to play that strum pattern. And I played this in orchestra, and it was not fun. It was not a good time. So remember, with strumming, just please give your musicians time. With anything, I think, just please give your musicians time. Okay? So there you have it. Pizzicato. I think I've covered the three that I want to cover. So the next topic that I want to talk about is staccato versus spiccato. Okay? They are short and detached bow stroke, and they are notated the same way. Obviously, when you look at this, if you cover up the spiccato, if you look at this, they're just staccato. They're just called staccato. Spiccato is the way that it's a technique used to play staccato. I'm sorry, there's just too much sp and staccato. Spiccato is the technique that you use to play staccato. Okay. Can we have Mansoor just play a quick open D string, or did I, Yegane, do you want to do it? Yegane, let's do it. Okay, so let's have a quick open D string staccato, just da 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 da. Great. And now let's hear the spiccato. Great. So what happens is that the staccato is played on the string. The bow does not leave the string. The technique level is beginner. Anyone can play a staccato. And it sounds, and a staccato sounds heavier than a spiccato. Spiccato is played off the string. So the bow bounces off the string. It physically leaves the string. The technique level, I would say, is intermediate, but again, it depends on the player. But I wouldn't be writing spiccato for like if it was like a beginner string orchestra or a beginner string quartet, I wouldn't be giving them spiccatos. It's lighter, bouncier, and it gives like a more jolly feel. Usually I would say whether or not the quartet or the string player moves into spiccato is kind of to the discretion of the musicians. If we're playing something like even presto not presto, but like even allegro, something fast and like, something like in the style of Mozart, then it will be played spiccato, and we will automatically make that decision. But then I guess as a composer, if you really want something played a certain way, I would literally just write like on or off. So let's go look at Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to ask is that for viola and cello, for bar 5 and 8, can you guys do it spiccato? And just show an example of that. So bar 5 and 8.
5, 2, 8?
5, 2, 8, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. And now what we're going to do is that we're just going to add in the upper voices for that. So plus the violin. Actually, you know what? Just violin 1, just Claire, just so that you can still hear the spiccato going on with the lower voices. Thank you for that. And now what we're going to do is that we're going to change it. So the viola and the cello from bars 5 to 8, it's going to be staccato, so on the string. Let's just hear that first. Nice, thank you. And I'm sure that was a bit awkward to do with Mozart. And then again, now we're gonna add in Claire to that. Nice. Thank you, Quartet. We got a nice little fade out going on. I love it. Yeah, so with staccato, when it's on the string, especially for Mozart, I think I think that that's incorrect. I could say that that's incorrect. Yes, for Mozart, staccato. It kind of sounds like someone's dragging their feet with Mozart, like yeah, and we don't want that. But I don't know. Maybe you guys are like, yes, this is amazing. This is definitely great. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Okay, now moving on, I want to talk about mutes, con Sordino or consort as short. Okay, so we have what we call orchestral mutes. We have what we call orchestral mutes, and we have what we call practice mute. This is like, I would say, like an in-between an orchestral and a practice mute, but these two you use at orchestra. This guy you use when you're practicing at home. Okay, so can we have the quartet play like a D minor ascending and descending, just one octave, without the mutes on? I guess I should have made it a specific D minor melodic. Okay, now we're gonna try with the mute. Nice. And then lastly, I actually have a practice mute on hand. And I'm going to give it to Claire because she's the closest to me. And this one greatly affects volume. So, and then Claire, whenever you're ready. Nice. Now try that without the mute, just so people can see the difference. Nice. Thank you, Claire. So if you look at your slide, the orchestral mute is more commonly used. It changes the timbre more than it changes the volume, and it's used for orchestra and performances. The practice mute is not as commonly used. It greatly affects volume, and it's mostly used for practicing in a shared living space. So I live in an apartment, so whenever I teach, I use a practice mute because my neighbors don't like me. a common theme is that a common theme that I see with a lot of composers is that they never give musicians enough time to put on their mutes. I feel like that's like the lesson of my speech, is to always give musicians time to do whatever it is that they need to do. But especially, you would think that like just like putting on a mute is like an easy thing to do, that like it's very, very quick and it's very quiet. It is actually not. You have to give your musicians time to put it on quietly. Now, a good example of someone who does do this really well is Tchaikovsky. So thank you, Tchaikovsky. So on the slide, it has Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, the Elegy. So if you look at the beginning, I hope you guys can see my mouse clearly. If you look at the beginning of Tchaikovsky's Elegy, everyone is playing without the mute. And you have this entire bar rest to give the violin 1 time to put on their mutes. And then they play with their mutes, and everyone is still playing without their mutes. And then the violin 1 has a solo over here. And this entire time that the second, the violas, the cellos, and the double basses, the entire time that they have their rest, they're actually given instructions over here. And Tchaikovsky is literally saying, hey guys, it's time to put on your mutes quietly. And look at that. At tempo 1, everyone has their mutes on. And like you would think that like it's such like a small gesture, but it is a small and appreciated gesture. So thank you, Tchaikovsky. All right, now moving on to glissandos. Glissandos is a glide from one pitch to the other. It is deliberate and notated, unlike portamento. So portamento is also a glide from one pitch to the other, but it's used more as like an ornamentation, you know, like if someone wants to spice up their music, you know, you add a little like whoop over there. It's not notated and it's not necessarily deliberate. Some things to keep in mind is that slow glissandos are harder to do than fast glissandos, especially if the intervals are smaller, and especially if you're going to be playing with a group, just because like it gets lost like where you are in the glissando, especially if it's like a really, really slow glissando and it's like a G to an A or G to an A flat. Let's have the quartet do a glissando demonstration. Let's have, did I write down who's doing it?
Violin 1 and cello.
Oh yeah, violin 1 and cello. Let's have that. Let's have a little duet with violin 1 and cello, and let's try.
We'll repeat the top note then.
Nice. Now, if you look at the slide, glissandos over here, they're not marked with a slur, but then they naturally played it with a slur because that's a natural thing to do. But let's just try to hear them do it without slurs. How would that even sound? I don't even know.
Where do you want the bow to change?
But I guess the next note can change,
Okay.
like right at the next note.
Sure. So she wants the bow change on the last note.
Nice. Thank you, guys. Okay, now the next thing I want to talk about is Col Legno with the wood of the bow. It is not as difficult as it looks, though it can be a bit harder to achieve like dynamics. So the best example would be to use Holst Mars. Let's just hear the quartet play the first 2 bars is good. Nice. And let's hear them play it not Col Legno, so maybe just like at the frog or something. Thank you. It kind of sounds like your teeth is like clattering. It's like, I'm so cold. Now the next one we have is, that's the Mars. The next one we have is Sul Tasto, played on the fingerboard. So it's a softer and hollower type of sound. It's quieter as well. String players will automatically move closer to the fingerboard if they see something written like PPP or like PPPPPP. So let's have a little demonstration. So let's have the quartet do a C minor harmonic scale. Ascending is going to be normal, so just like play on, like I guess play like a piano normally, and then descending is going to be Sul Tasto on the fingerboard.
Yes, it was 3, 4. Sorry, we're doing minor and harmonic. Sorry, my bad.
Nice, thank you. So when the bow is on the fingerboard, it already naturally gets quieter. And again, yes, we naturally do this when we see like orchestra, p. Okay, next one we have the opposite, sol ponticello. So that is when the string is close to, or even like almost like on the bridge. It creates more of a gritty sound and it brings out the harmonics, and it will sound slightly different just depending on how close the bow is to the bridge. So can we have maybe like, can we maybe hear like a Sul Tasto from Kimiko? I gotta do the Bartok Pits. Yes. So let's just have like a normal like open D string. Tasto. Sul Tasto. Okay. No, Sol Ponticello. I'm sorry. Sol Ponticello. Okay. Nice. Now let's like move slightly away from the bridge. See how that sounds? And just move closer now. So as a composer, if you're writing in a Sol Ponticello, I would honestly say just like write it down what you want. You know, if you want it to be really, really close to the bridge, then do that. Can we hear the quartet play, again, the C minor harmonic scale? And let's just have ascending. And then let's have like a normal bow. And then let's just slowly move closer to the bridge as we go up. Nice. Thank you. All right. Awesome. I'm assuming that you guys have questions, but we will answer them and we will get to them towards the end. Okay. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is tremolos. So tremolo is the effect you get by making small bow strokes repetitively and very, very quickly. So with tremolos, there's measured and there's unmeasured. Okay, so if it's unmeasured, it looks like this. And then if it's measured, it can be written in 1, 2, 3 ways. And you might be thinking, isn't measured tremolos just 16th notes? And you're correct. They are just 16th notes. But I guess they're like 16th notes with like a melody, if that makes sense, if I'm making sense. So with unmeasured, it can be used to create like a nice shimmering effect. The sound is fuller and a little bit messier. And I'm not saying messier in like a bad way. I just mean it's just like a little bit more hazy. Because it's unmeasured, everyone's bow stroke is going at their own type of speed. So this is the Grieg string quartet number 1. Can we maybe play like 4 bars of this and 4 after the più mosso? So the cello has a nice solo.
Oh, okay.
So this is unmeasured. 4 after più mosso.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. That sounds really, really good. This is one of my favorite string quartets, so hearing it here just a little bit. I was like, oh, so nice. Okay, now we have measured tremolos. So measured tremolos, I've added in Beethoven 7, his symphony, the first movement. Sorry, not Beethoven's symphony, his Beethoven violin concerto, the first movement. And so measured tremolos are used to create rhythmic energies. And yes, they are played as 16th notes. So let's hear the quartet do this. And, you know, maybe not too fast, like one, da, 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 da. And a quartet whenever you're ready.
So from the second bar. 3, 4.
Nice, thank you, Quartet. I'm just standing here appreciating the music. I haven't heard live music in so long. Okay, I think it'd be fun actually to just try this as unmeasured. I think it might be a bit messy, but we're just gonna try it. Why not? So Quartet, whenever you're ready.
3, 4.
Nice. Thank you, Quartet. It almost sounds like bees, like that thing is going on. Okay, next up we have harmonics. So harmonics are overtones. It's a technique used to play overtones, okay? And there are two types. There's natural harmonics. So you see I have a little leaf. And then there's an artificial harmonic. And I think this is wall E. So natural harmonics, this is how they're notated over here on the bottom. So it says violin 1 and violin 2. But they're both just violin 1. So so the little circle over here is how it's notated. And as you can see, I've written in the string that I want them to play it on, just because that there are the same notation. So for example, this D over here is the same as this D over here, but they're played on different strings. This is how you would notate it, violin 2, and then this is in a violin 1, that's how it would sound. That's the octave that it will sound at. So I always say that natural harmonics is easier for the musicians but harder for the composers, because for the musicians, it's natural harmonics are quite easy, I would say. But for the composers, sometimes it's going to be 2 octaves up, sometimes it's going to be 1 octave up, and sometimes it's not even going to be 1 octave up, it's going to be the same note. It can't be done on every single note. It can only be done on these notes that I've written here. These are the natural harmonics for the cello, and then these are for the violas. If anyone want these graphs, just message, email me and I'll give it to you. So composers can write out which string they want to use for the natural harmonics if they have a preference, just because depending on which string you use it on, the timbre will be slightly different. So for example, why don't you play the first graph over there, just the scale. So you're going to play 1 on the D string and then the same scale on the A string for the harmonics. Nice. And now she's going to do the same thing, but on the A string. The harmonic is going to be on the A string. Nice. So back to the graph. The one on the A string sounds a lot brighter. It sounds a lot more open. Okay. Someone who does this is an example of someone a composer who did this is Monty's Chardash. Okay, so you have the ba da 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 da, and then Monty goes da 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 yum on the E string, and then yum, same note but on the A string. At least that's how I played it. There, everyone plays Monty's Chardash differently. But let's hear that example, and then Claire, you can just stop at the half note afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm actually going to play it the other way around. So I'm going to play the first one on the A string, and then the second one on the E string.
Okay, sounds good.
Maybe, if I can.
Nice. Thank you, Claire. Um, Pro tip, think about the musicality as well as the practicality. That sounded nice, but was it practical? Probably not. All right, so, and then we have artificial harmonics. Now, artificial harmonics, I always say, is easier for the composer, but harder for the musicians. So it's easy for the composers because every note can be an artificial harmonic if you wanted it to be. So it's notated like this with a little diamond on top of the note. And the reason for that is because it's a stopped note. So you stop with your first finger and then you have the harmonic with your fourth finger and it's like touching the string. For the cello, is it your thumb? Right, so for the cello, instead of stopping with your first, you stop with your thumb. And it's not, I mean, like, I personally really like playing harmonics, but it's not the most fun thing to play for string musicians, and it can be quite difficult. And I would say that, again, the technique is a little bit more advanced. So if you're writing for younger musicians or you're writing for beginner musicians, keep in mind that artificial harmonics are a little bit, it can be a little bit more difficult. Now, what usually happens with artificial harmonics is that they're used for long phrases and passages, so like the variation of a motif. So an example of this would, again, be Monty's Czardas, and he takes the same theme, da, 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 that Claire so graciously played for us, and then he uses it now. He takes the same theme and he makes it a harmonic. So Claire is going to do the harmonic again, and I guess you can stop at the half note. Nice. Thank you, Claire. So if you look back on the sheet music on the slide, every single note can be played as a harmonic if you're using artificial harmonics. Okay. Moving on. Oh, wait, no, we have a fun twinkle harmonic going on. So let's hear that. So again, I wrote this, but I'm not a composer. So let's just hear the Twinkle Twinkle in B minor. So it's a bit spooky. So the viola and the cello has the harmonics. Sorry, guys. And the violins just have like regular notes. So whenever you're ready.
Can we play piano, the upper?
Yeah, let's play piano.
Let's try that again.
Nice, thank you. So just a little example of how harmonics can be artificial, and there are a few natural harmonics in there as well, how they can be incorporated into a piece. The lower voices, I guess my question would be, did you appreciate that?
It's a bit like trickier to sight read than if you're just doing normal notes. But
Yes, and since she's not hooked up to a microphone, she said that it is a little bit trickier to sight read. If I saw this and I was playing the viola, I would not appreciate this. Kimiko's a lot nicer about it, but I could just say I would not appreciate this. I would play it, but would I appreciate it? No. Okay, moving on to my favorite topic now is double, triple, and quadruple stops. And I went ahead and got a photo of this little boy crying because every time I see double, triple, and quadruple stops, I want to cry too. Now, there's two reasons why you would want to add double stops. And when I say double stops, I'm encompassing everything. To add volume and to add voices, or both. Now, if you're adding double stops, you can't treat double stops, and this is a big indicator of just like composers who are not string musicians. You can't add double stops as like an extra harmony line, unless you're Bach. But for example, I have the Serenade by Tchaikovsky. This is a string orchestra, so it's fine. because there are outside and inside players. But let's say that this was a quintet. So you had violin 1, 2, viola, cello, and then the double bass. This as a quartet, it wouldn't, I don't think it would sound good. It would sound very, very messy. And let's say you were the composer of this serenade, and you were just like, yeah, I just want to fit in extra voices and make it sound fuller, so I've just added in all these extra lines. But the reality is that the quartet will have a difficult time playing this, if they can even play it. So you guys have it? Do you guys want to try playing it as a quartet, playing both lines?
Oh, the viola has a nasty one there.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Going as it comes.
All right, thank you. I guess they're so good that you can't really tell, but I guess I can ask them. Did you appreciate that? Like playing all of the double stops and sight reading it like that?
In an orchestra, it's not going to be as in tune.
Claire says in an orchestra, it's not going to be as in tune. I'm not sure how well you can hear her because she's not mic'd up. And it's true. In an orchestra, it's not going to be as in tune. And let's say you have like a high school string orchestra playing it and everyone's playing the double stops, it's definitely not going to be in tune because most likely the second violins and maybe the violas and maybe the first and the cellos will have a really, really difficult time playing all of those double stops. Now, yeah, so again, and Bach does it where he writes like a lot of fugues, but that's Bach, and also Bach is very, very difficult to play. Something that you'll commonly see for for double stops is it to be used at the beginning or an end of a piece just to add like a little bit of like a oomph, like a hey, I'm here, or like goodbye, I'm gone. So for example, we have Mozart's Eine Klein, which will come back throughout this presentation. So Mozart's Eine Klein, he has the triple stop at the beginning, yump, bump, bump, just to be like, hey, I'm here. And at the very end, he has the double stops and the triple stops to be like, yes, this is my composition, and it was awesome. So let's just hear the first 4 bars of Mozart's Eine Klein. Cool, and just for the fun of it, let's just play for violin 1 and 2. Claire just played a top note, and then Yegane just played a second note, the B. Yeah, so it's not as virtuosic. It doesn't sound as virtuosic. It sounds a bit boring. Not saying that Mozart is boring, but it does without all of the double stops and triple stops. Now, with double stops specifically, not all double stops are created equal. And what do I mean by that is that there are harder double stops and there are easier double stops as well. So obviously, again, it is subjective to the players. Some people, so I've written here that, so this is from easiest to hardest, so easiest to hardest. So I've written here that thirds are easier than octaves, but some might argue, and some string players will think octaves are easier than thirds. Personally, I think octaves are easier than thirds. So it is subjective, but I can say for sure that 6 are easy, 7th are easy. For the cellos, it's a little bit different. 6 and 4ths. Oh, 4ths are harder. Again, everyone, it's subjective to it's subjective to the musicians. But again, it's just like double stops, I think, is just like a really, really tricky thing to compose if you're not a string player. So always just ask and always just workshop it, I think would be your best bet. Next, I want to talk about triple and quadruple stops. Now, triple and quadruple stops can be played in a variety of different ways, and that will change in when it comes to like styles or the effects that you want. So it can be played as a roll. So Claire, can you just play like a G major roll? Nice. And then let's do like a half and half, like half, half. Nice. And then I guess just play 3 strings and just try playing it all together. Nice. Oh, moved the next slide too soon. So, yeah, so when it comes to rolls, it really depends on the style. So if you're playing Mozart, I would say that like the general idea of Mozart would be to roll it. But I might be wrong about that. Or maybe you want to check in with like the recital hall, the venue that you're going to be playing at. So if you're going to be playing at a church, you might not want to roll because that might be a little bit too messy for everyone. You might want like a half-half. Or if you have like a string orchestra, you might want to do like an all 3 just to make it like more powerful. So it really depends on what effect that you're going for. So let's just do the Eine Klein again, and let's just see how different it'll sound Eine Klein. The first 4 bars, or I guess even the first 2 bars will be okay. The first 2 bars, and let's have it first as a roll. So the first and the seconds are going to roll. Great, now let's have it as a half and half da yum. Bum bum. Nice, and let's do like an all together, like all 3 strings. So everyone will have their preference. Personally, for me, I like the roll more, but some people like the half and half, some people like the all together. And again, it might also depend on just where you're performing it. What's the venue? What's the sound projection going to be like? Anyway, but yeah, that was interesting. It's interesting that like just like little things with string instruments can affect like how something sounds overall. It can affect style. Just like little minute things like bowing and, you know, like just playing something on an up bow instead of a down bow can drastically change something. And which brings me to my last slide, which you already saw. But when in doubt, ask a friend, okay? Because, this goes for all instruments. But speaking specifically of string instruments is that like it can be hard to write for them when you're not a string player. And oftentimes as string musicians, when we look at new music, we'll look at it and we'll be like, this person's definitely not a string player. It's just like, yes, this person is a string player because everything is like easy or not easy, but playable. Yes, now I know that there's a delay, but I think we can go to the Q&A, and I hope that people have been dropping down questions. Marie, do you want to go? Bowing. So Brandon asked, bowing on a long note.
After a series of short notes, so maybe like an up, down. I don't know.
Do you? I'm going to assume that he means like a long note, and then you're playing.
So after a series of shorter notes, so it depends. It just depends where, like, what kind of shorter notes are they?
Wait, Claire, I'm gonna give you the microphone so that you can.
Claire can just speak up. And I'll just raise the microphone for her.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, never mind.
You ready, Matthew?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it depends a lot on the nature of the short notes. So, like, let's say if the short notes are quiet and they're like Sul Tasto, sort of we'll be playing at the tip. So if we have, so then we might do like a double down, and then if we have a long note, then we're going to go up because we're at the tip, right? Sorry, I'm looking into the microphone. So we go. Okay, but if the short notes are louder, or they're like, you know, spiccato or whatever, we're going to be lower in the bow. So then we're going to need to do a down bow. So if we go, then we're going to need to go down. So it depends the nature of the short notes for the bowing that follows. Yeah, so that's what I mean, like the dynamics, the whatever else you've required in terms of articulation and.
All right, thank you, Claire.
Yeah, that sounded great. So other musicians can do the same thing if we need to demo. We'll just use your microphone.
Okay.
Okay, another question also from Brandon says, would you ever use left-hand pizz in an orchestral setting?
Okay, so Brandon asks, would you ever use left-hand pizz in an orchestral setting? Would I use it? Yes. Have I ever seen it? No, I don't think so. Have I seen it? Have you guys seen it?
I'm trying to think like maybe operetta or like I'm trying to think like I don't know.
Some of the Greek pieces has very quick, but we did some of this to kind of to make it sound better. Greek is it Holberg variation? I don't know. It's a string suite. Yeah, there's a quick, but it's difficult to play. We used to use that kind of also way. Maybe not ideal, but possibly. If it's fast, I think this can be kind of adjusted in a way.
I can like vaguely remember something with like both. So you're using, you know, the right hand pizz and left hand, so to be able to play faster. Because if you're going, that's harder. So something like that. I vaguely remember seeing that somewhere or playing it.
Right. Well, maybe we could have done that for Lieutenant Kiji.
I forget what the fingerings are for those triple stops or
Da 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 da. Yeah, no, we
chords.
wouldn't have been able to do that with Lieutenant Kiji. I guess like another thing is like just the level of the orchestra. I mean, if you're writing for the TSO or you're writing for TOEFL music, like go for it, you know, like write in all the left-hand pits. But if you're writing for like a high school orchestra, I would say perhaps not. What Mansour demonstrated was really nice for something that was fast. But if I were, let's say all of my violin skills were transferred onto cello, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like I definitely wouldn't be. I would have been, yeah, the left-hand pits. I would have been like, no, it's not happening. Yeah. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Marie?
Do you risk snapping a string or damaging the instrument with a Bartok pizz?
Do you risk snapping the string or damaging the instrument with the Bartok pits? Yes, you do risk, but that is a risk. That's a sacrifice we're willing to make. No. I guess we just have to be careful with that.
It's going to depend on the aggressiveness level of your musicians and what mood they're in. So yeah, but if you're dealing with a really high level ensemble, they're going to be reluctant to dig into those Bartok pizzas. They're also going to be really reluctant to do, like if you write a Col Legno forte, they're really not going to like that because their bows are worth like tens of thousands of dollars. So if you're writing for high level people, yeah, don't ask them to damage their instruments. They won't like it.
I don't think I've never snapped a string before doing Bartok pizzas, but I have like greatly untuned my instrument. But I've never snapped a string. Also with Col Legno, with what Claire just said, for Holst Mars, I know a lot of musicians who bring in like a cheaper bow for the performance so that they can do the Col Legno on the cheaper bow and then use their own bow to play the rest. Because yeah, it does damage your instrument a little bit.
Yeah, we're playing Shostakovich right now, Symphony 14, and there's a forte Col Legno section. Like, first of all, to get forte in Col Legno is pretty well impossible. I mean, it's just not that loud. So, but then on top of that, you know, you're putting dents in your bow. You know, you may not even own this bow, depending, right? So,
Yeah.
So
It's a bit like hesitant.
yeah,
And just give it like a microphone, just for that one part.
exactly.
All right. Do we have a next question?
Yeah. Is there a sign for strumming?
Is there a sign for strumming? No, I don't think so.
With like a lot of over 16th notes, I've seen it with arrows, like da 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 da, like that. I think.
There might be a sign for strumming then, but I've personally
It might
never
be, like,
seen
made
it.
up, though. Like someone could have just been like, "Oh, this is probably
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
communicate what I want."
Yeah, I've never seen the sign for strumming, but if I was looking at a piece like Lieutenant Kiji and the entire thing was just like that, then I would make the call to just strum it. I would put the violin down and I would strum it. And also, like, if anything, you can just write down in the sheet music. If it's new music, you just write it down, strum like guitar, and everyone will be able to get that. I don't think it's like that big of a deal that you're like writing in the music. I don't think.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, you might want to write strum upright or strum like guitar just to distinguish so people know. And because you're the composer, you can make your own notes at the front and just make a sign, choose whatever sign you want and just indicate it in words. Or just put strum if you want to leave it up to their discretion how to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So from an unmeasured terms, and you talk about tremolos, after how many seconds or bars is considered too much? For example, tiring or annoying to the musician.
Okay, so how much tremolo, unmeasured tremolo, is too much tremolo?
After what point does it get tiring or annoying for the musician?
After what point does it get tiring or annoying for the musicians? Well, that is that like varies from musician to musician. But I think Bruckner 4 has a lot of tremolos. Yeah, so if you look at Bruckner 4, he has like an entire it's like quite a lot of tremolos. So if you look at if you want to use that as an example of what's going to be very, very tiring for the musicians, but otherwise I think it really is up to the
Also dynamic, I think. If it's pianissimo, it's easier. Kind of you can do it longer. You don't have to work harder. If it's fortissimo or something like that, that's much.
Yeah. And also if it's open string, it's a lot easier. If you're doing like tremolo that's like with like multiple fingers, then it's tiring for your left hand as well.
You will arrive your destination much earlier than you expect.
yeah, all of those very, very good points. Yagani, do you have like a
I was gonna say dynamics are the main thing for me.
Okay. But then if you want like a specific, I don't know, I usually get tired after like a minute. But I'll still do it. Like it really is just like it's tiring, but if it's written in, I guess you'll still do it.
It depends on like the like environment you're into. If you see everyone really like going for it and like giving it their all, you're just like more and more inspired. But if everyone's just like, this is like the most annoying part ever, you're just like, there's some psychology behind it, I think.
Yes,
For
it's,
sure.
yes. So if everyone was in my orchestra, everyone would be tired after a minute because I would be like, Okay, next question.
Okay. Sorry. Do contrabassists have similar trouble with the same double stops as cellists?
No, they're different. Because their tuning is different, right? Usually?
Yes.
So it wouldn't be the exact same, in terms of intonation at least. I don't know about like logistic things, but
Okay, so the answer is no.
but some people do tune in fifths.
Yeah. I guess like maybe like I can reach out to a few double bassist friends, and if you want like a more like thorough like what's easy and what's hard, email me, and I can either connect you or I can ask for you. Just because we don't have any double bassists with us right now.
Kemi,
Yes.
do you mind just repeating the question on the microphone because I don't have Marie on the mic very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. The question was
Do bassists have the same trouble with the same double stops as cellists?
so the question was, do bassists have the same trouble with double stops? The same double stops that cellists have that's troubling, is it the same for basses? And the answer is no, because the tuning for the double basses are different. But yes, if you want like a more comprehensive answer, I think email me and I will reach out to a few people and answer that question better for you.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you clarify whether the quadruple stop should be played half and half roll or all at once? Or three or one?
Okay, so how do you clarify how you would want the quadrupled stops to be played? So the roll, half and half, like all three at once. I don't think I've ever seen it clarified, or I think Yagane has seen it clarified.
From what I remember, rolls are kind of like squiggly lines. And then if you want the chunks clear, they're in brackets beside the notes, beside the chord.
Yes, I wish I could show you an example. But Matthew, how well can that camera zoom in on me? Like, how well can they see me?
If you give me a minute, it would be more so my performance than the cameras.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I'll draw it out. So 1 second. Let me see if I can draw it out for So can people see that? So if it was a roll, I think it's the squiggly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then let me get rid of this. If it was the half and half, like 2-2, it would be like the bracket. And then some people would do like 3-1, so that way the bracket would just change. Like this.
You can just hold that steady for 1 second. Thank you. Perfect.
I'm so glad you guys are here. You guys are just fixing all my answers. Like, no, there isn't. And Yagane is like, yes, there actually is. Okay. Next question.
Are there any kind of bizarre or unusual techniques that any of you know offhand?
Bizarre. Okay. Are there any bizarre or unusual techniques that any of us know offhand? A lot of like extended techniques, and extended techniques can really be anything. I mean, like I've seen some like improv techniques of people just like using their fingers and tapping the board of their violin. I've done that a lot in improv. Do you guys know any?
Last year, one of the composers was using the left-hand tremolo with a slide, so like that was pretty cool.
Anyone else?
Subharmonics, where you like try to get the undertone.
Oh,
or
yes.
whatever. I can't do it, but
Yes, but
like you have to really dig in.
yes, I know what you're talking about. Do you want to try explaining it? So
No.
Oh, okay.
So we have the overtone series where all of the natural harmonics that Kemi was discussing, and then there's like more that you can reach that are like lower than the open strings that you're playing. So I'm playing like an open G right now. Like those sounds that are lower in pitch.
I know what you're talking about. I do know what you're talking about. Basically, you dig into the string so much that you reach the harmonics. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
There's a lady who specializes in that at Juilliard, right? Mari something, a Japanese name, but she specializes in that, and yeah, you can look her up on YouTube. Undertones.
Undertones. So look it up on YouTube. Undertones, violin, string, undertone, harmonics.
Yeah.
Subharmonics. Kimiko, Mansoor, do you guys have any weird techniques?
I think this is common. You hold one note and then you play the pizzicato with the left hand. Those kind of things. Or
I like that technique.
also, like we played in new music in different parts of the. I think it changed. I don't know if there's difference. It's difficult to kind of. There's many things. We played on the cello.
Yes, yes.
Or here, you know, you get all kind of sounds. I think, like here you play, or here, for example. I don't know. we did here. I don't know. You can get anywhere sound, basically. Just it's like sometimes damaged if it's. There was one piece here we played, and then I cheated though. I did here. It's because you're gonna ruin the cello, so you can have like that kind of sounds
Nice.
you can create. Is nice.
Nice. And then Kimiko, do you have any?
I think a lot have been mentioned. You already mentioned like knocking on the instrument. There's also like chops, which are usually used in like jazz type string playing, where you like a chop at the frog to kind of make like a rhythmic sound. Yeah.
Okay, a fun question. Okay, next one.
Are there different tunings or scotaturas common in a quartet?
Scottatura?
It's a different tune.
Are there different tunings or are scotaturas common in a quartet? I wouldn't say they're common, but yeah, you can definitely like tune your strings differently. Have you guys ever played anything with like a different tuning? Mansur says yes.
I mean, that was solo piece. I played Kodai cello sonata, and then Bach cello suite number 5. It's different pieces. There's exist, but I haven't.
Usually solo, yeah. Or you, I've never heard of any quartet like common structure that has scordatura, but it does come up in the repertoire.
I think quartet it would be a little bit harder in terms of intonation because it's already hard without scordatura. You know.
And then obviously when the tuning changes, all the fingerings that the musician is used to changes as well. And I wouldn't ask a musician to detune their strings more than a semitone or a whole tone. I think more than that is excessive. Not like it's just bad.
Yeah, definitely. I guess like we see more of it in like modern and like improv, those kind of settings.
It's a little bit more common in Baroque.
Baroque, yeah.
Oh, yes. Also Baroque. I guess if you tune down to 415, that's basically what, like a semitone lower.
Well, they do it legitimately, like from the pegs, they actually tune it up or down. Each string is a different string.
Okay, so
Different pitch there.
okay, so Marie says that in Baroque they actually like do detune their instruments. But yes. Okay. Do you have any other questions?
This is a fun one. Which instrument in a string quartet is usually the least active or has the most boring parts?
Viola. Second violin or viola. The inner voices.
For instance, in today's presentation, it was definitely the second. It was like the most important.
I think cello has the less things to play.
Anything except the first violin then.
But it's interesting though.
And like the style, obviously in the classical era, it was very much like the soloist and then the accompaniment. But
Right, yes.
it's obviously not like that anymore.
Yeah, like if you're playing Shostakovich, the viola part is going to be as hard as maybe harder than some of the other parts. Or Dvorak, will have more challenging parts for viola. So it depends a lot on the composer and their familiarity with the instruments and.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say it ranges from style to style. We used to have a joke at university when we were playing like lots of classical music. We would always joke that the first violin would be like da-da-da-da-da-da, and then the second and the viola would be chop 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 chop, and then the cello would be yum 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 bum bum. Tonic. Anyway, yes, I hope that answers your question. Do we have any other questions?
Just a quick note that it's a couple minutes past 2.
Oh,
We
yes.
might need to wrap up in a few minutes.
Okay, so Marie, we have 2 more questions. Awesome. Let's do that.
Okay, should the composer indicate positions to use or always leave that up to the performer?
Should the composer indicate the position to use or should that be left to the musicians? I would say I would say leave it to the musicians unless there's a reason, like, you really want this to be played on the G string because it gives you that tone that you want. But otherwise, I would say leave it to the musicians.
Yeah, even if you want Sil G, just put Sil G and let the players decide what the fingerings are going to be. So, because if you put a position, you're deciding the fingerings for them. So, unless you play that instrument or there's something really specific you want, then just leave it up to the players.
I always say, like, if you're writing down something to say, like a down bow or an up bow, if I'm reading that, I'm always like, okay, there's a reason why you're giving me this instruction, it's because, I don't know, the first finger over here sounds much better than the third finger over here, and then I would assume that you're also a string player. Yes, okay, next and last question.
This is just a fun question. What are some of everybody's favorite string quartet pieces?
Ooh, what are some of everybody's favorite string quartet pieces? Well, the Greek string quartet number 1, I just listened to it last night, so I feel like that's like fresh in my head. That's always going to be one of my favorites to listen to. I've never played it, but to listen to. Let's go around the room and ask.
I was actually just showing the quartet in our last rehearsal. The Ginastera or Hinastera string quartet number 2 is one that I really love. Really cool.
Anyone else?
I love Borodin's compositions. Yeah, they're charming. Yeah. There are lots of others, but those just came to mind right now.
Okay. You got it.
My first answer is usually Grieg too.
Or Shostakovich.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mansur, do you have one?
Depending on the piece. I usually like classical, like Beethoven and Mozart mostly. I enjoy that more. Or, you know, there's more things to kind of.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone who's joined into the live stream and who's have submitted some questions. I hope that we answered everything as best as we can. And again, if you have any questions, you can always just email me and I'll try to answer them for you. If you want to network with any of the quartet members or with the quartet themselves, just let me know. Send me an email and I'll be happy to, help facilitate that. Anyway, we are going to take a short break and we're going to come back at around at 2:30. We're going to come back at 2:30 to do the reading sessions. Thank you everyone for being here with us today. And thank you so much. Goodbye.